What if the secular mindfulness meditation that you do to cope with your daily stress is actually the exact psychological requirement for ancient occult possession?
I mean, that sounds like the premise of a psychological horror film.
It really does.
Yeah.
But today, we're opening a deeply controversial, like incredibly dense text that claims exactly that. We're looking at a document titled A Society of Saints. And this isn't just a casual philosophical essay. It's a sweeping theological and sociological manifesto that attempts to construct a unified theory of everything.
Right.
Like human existence, the seen and unseen world, and the absolute unyielding hard line between divine will and the occult.
It is a text of massive, almost overwhelming scope.
Yeah.
It attempts to explain the architecture of reality by arguing that you cannot understand the physical world without understanding the invisible supernatural gravity that is dictating like every single physical act.
Right. And before we wade into this, I need to explicitly set the stage and state right up front to everyone listening.
Yeah, this is important.
This text contains highly charged, deeply polarizing religious, political, and social views.
Very much so.
Specifically, it makes some very intense claims regarding gender, sexuality, and the fundamental structure of modern society.
And our mission for this deep dive is strictly impartial.
Exactly.
We are not here to endorse these viewpoints. We're not taking sides.
Yeah.
And we are certainly not validating the author's claims as universal truths.
Right.
Our job today is purely to act as analytical guides.
We are putting on our hazmat suits of objectivity.
That is the best way to approach it. We're going to map out the architecture of the author's arguments. The goal is to help you understand the internal logic of this highly specific worldview and just convey the ideas exactly as they are constructed in the original text.
So you can see how the author is attempting to fit all these massive puzzle pieces together.
Exactly.
And our roadmap for this exploration is going to take us through some pretty wild territory.
Yeah, it is.
We'll start by examining how this author defines magic versus miracles, which is really the foundation of their entire universe. Then we'll look at some highly controversial claims about the physical body's role in the spiritual realm. And ultimately, we'll examine what the author actually believes constitutes a society of saints and why they think modern society is basically doomed.
To even begin to grasp those societal claims later on, we first have to understand the rule book this author is playing by.
Yeah, the basic mechanics.
Right. We have to look at the architecture of human will and how the text defines the supernatural laws of the universe.
So let's start right there, because the text opens by drawing this massive cosmic distinction between magic and miracles. Now, to an outsider or, someone who just watches fantasy movies, magic and miracles look like the exact same mechanism.
Yeah, sure.
Somebody points a finger, says a few words, and something impossible happens. But in this author's framework, they're diametrically opposed. They are cosmic enemies.
Yeah, the author defines them not by what the actions look like to a bystander, but by the mechanics of how they operate underneath the surface. And crucially, whose will is driving the event.
Right.
Let's break down the text's definition of magic, or magic with a K, as the author sometimes styles it.
Referencing older occult traditions, right?
Exactly. The text states that magic is not just sleight of hand. It is the use of one's own individual will to perform an action that actively violates the laws of nature.
Violates. Okay, so it's an act of cosmic rebellion. You're looking at the code of the universe and actively trying to break it.
Yes. The practitioner is trying to bend fundamental natural laws to match the strength of their own desires. And within the strict Christian framework this author is writing from, that act of attempting to enforce your individual will over the natural order is deemed abominable before God.
But the author introduces a massive catch here, right?
It's a huge one, yeah.
The text basically says humans are actually too weak to pull this off.
Right.
Man in his natural state is entirely incapable of actually violating those laws. Our will alone doesn't have the horsepower to bend reality.
Which means real magical practice, according to this worldview, almost exclusively requires demonic intervention.
Okay, so the practitioner thinks they're the one doing the magic, but they are essentially just a conduit.
It is what the text frames as the ultimate illusion of control. The magician deludes themselves into believing they're dominating these supernatural forces,
Right.
binding demons or spirits to get wealth, power, or whatever earthly desire they have. But the stark reality, according to the author, is that these entities are the ones actively exploiting the practitioner.
Wow.
The magician isn't the master. They're the mark. And this transaction ultimately results in the damnation of their soul.
Okay, I was trying to conceptualize this when I was reading, and it feels a lot like downloading a cheat code for a video game.
Okay, yeah.
Imagine you're playing a game, it's too difficult, so you go to some sketchy forum and download a program that promises to give you infinite health or let you walk through walls.
Right, right.
You want to bend the rules of the game to your individual will, and for a minute, it works.
Mhm.
You feel incredibly powerful, you're dominating the server, but what you don't realize is that the cheat code was actually a Trojan horse.
That's it.
You downloaded malware, and now a hacker has completely hijacked your computer, they're scraping your bank data, and they're going to brick your hard drive.
Yeah.
You thought you were hacking the game, but you were the one being hacked.
That analogy maps perfectly onto the mechanics described in this document. The temporary earthly power, the infinite health in the game, is merely a lure for a much darker, permanent spiritual transaction.
Wow.
The author believes occultists are simply downloading spiritual malware.
Okay, so if bending reality with your will is demonic malware, how does the author explain miracles? Because when a saint heals someone, or when Moses parts the Red Sea, how is that any different? It looks like a clear violation of physics.
The crucial difference lies in the relationship to the creator of those natural laws. The text argues that miracles, by definition, do not violate natural laws.
I struggled with that part of the text.
Yeah, it's tricky.
Because a guy walking on water seems like a pretty aggressive violation of gravity and surface tension. So how does the author reconcile that?
The author's argument is rooted in the hierarchy of creation.
Okay.
God created those natural laws in the first place. Therefore, when unexplainable events occur through divine intervention, they aren't breaking the laws like a hacker breaking code.
Right.
They're actions that operate above the level of our human understanding of those laws. They are supernatural because they are superior to the natural, not in rebellion against it.
Ah, okay. So a miracle is the original programmer of the simulation adjusting the code to do something new.
Exactly.
Whereas magic is a user trying to forcefully inject a virus to break the code.
Yes. The distinction always comes back to the origin of the will.
Okay.
In magic, the individual is imposing their own localized will. In a miracle, the saint has aligned their will entirely with the programmers, with God's.
Which naturally leads to a massive philosophical question about identity.
It does.
If magic is forcing your own will on the universe, and the author says that's demonic, does following God mean you have to erase who you are completely?
Right.
Like, do you just become a mindless, empty puppet for the divine will? Because that sounds terrifying in its own right.
The author anticipates that exact pushback.
Oh, they do?
The text explicitly rejects the idea of annihilating the self. In fact, it specifically contrasts this Christian framework with certain interpretations of Buddhist traditions,
Okay.
where the cessation of the individual self might be viewed as the ultimate goal of enlightenment. In this text theology, union with God does not require the abrogation or destruction of your personality or yourself.
But how do you perfectly align your will without losing your individuality? That seems like a paradox.
The author roots this mechanic entirely in the resurrection of Christ.
Okay.
The text claims that upon the incarnation and resurrection, human essence became inextricably linked to the divine Trinity. So the goal for a believer on earth is to emulate Christ. You aren't destroying your human essence to become divine. You are perfecting your human essence. By aligning your will with God's, the text argues you are experiencing humanity in the process of salvation. You are, in the author's exact words, truly becoming human.
You're becoming the ultimate, fully realized version of yourself,
Exactly.
rather than dissolving into a drop of water in the cosmic ocean.
The unique self is maintained, but its desires and will operate in perfect harmony with the divine blueprint. There's no friction.
Okay, so if this entire spiritual battle is about aligning your will versus enforcing your will, how does the physical body play into this?
Yeah, this is where it shifts.
Because up to this point, the text makes this sound like a very mental, invisible, internal game. But the author pivots hard here.
They really do.
They insist that physical reality is iconographic. It patterns and reflects spiritual reality. You cannot separate what you do with your physical body from what is happening to your soul.
The author absolutely refuses to compartmentalize the physical and the spiritual.
All right.
If you want to align your will with God, it requires grueling physical action. And this is where the text details the absolute necessity of Christian asceticism.
Asceticism.
Yeah.
So this is the practice of intense self-discipline. We're talking about like the monks in the desert eating locusts, wearing uncomfortable clothes, that sort of thing.
Yes. The text focuses on practices like fasting, acts of physical contrition, and bodily repentance.
Okay.
The author states believers are called to physically deny themselves. But the why is the critical component here.
Right.
It isn't because the author believes the physical body is inherently evil or dirty, which is an old heresy called Gnosticism, that the text avoids.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Rather, asceticism is a tool to subordinate the inclinations of the body, what the text calls the passion,
It's passions, right?
to subordinate those to the higher will of God.
So it's physical training for a spiritual muscle.
It's a physical outworking of that spiritual alignment. If your body naturally demands food and you choose to fast, you are actively, physically, practicing the subordination of a baseline physical desire to a higher spiritual calling. You are training the will to obey.
Okay, and the text sets up a fascinating, if disturbing, inverse to this when it talks about the occult.
It really does.
Because if Christian asceticism is about denying physical desires to train the will, the magical inversion goes in the exact opposite direction.
Yeah, in the realm of magic, according to this author, the physical desires of the body are seen as the purest expression of the individual's will.
Right.
And remember the golden rule of magic in this paradigm.
The individual will must never be denied.
Exactly.
Right.
So instead of subordinating your bodily passions, you elevate them. You feed them. Everything, physical or otherwise, must be bent in accordance with what the magician wants to experience or consume.
So you just lean into whatever the body wants.
Yes, and this creates a very dark, mechanical requirement in the author's framework. We established earlier that human will alone can't do magic. It requires a demon.
Right. The malware.
To gain that demonic power, the text states that one must literally become a vessel for these forces.
You have to make room for the malware to install itself.
You have to be hollowed out.
Hollowed out.
Yeah, the author notes that this hollowing can begin mentally through practices that deliberately empty the mind of active thought. But because physical reality must mirror supernatural reality, the text insists there's a mandatory physical component to this hollowing as well.
Wait, a physical component?
You cannot just mentally invite these forces. You have to physically enact the hollowing of your vessel.
So if hollowing the mind makes you a mental vessel for the occult, the author's insistence that the physical body must mirror the spiritual realm demands a physical act of hollowing.
That's the argument.
And this is where the author makes their most polarizing, highly specific claims.
It is.
And I want to reiterate for our listeners, we are shifting into a highly charged space here, strictly analyzing the author's worldview.
Yes. The concept of physical hollowing leads directly into the author's arguments about how occult power is supposedly achieved in the physical realm. The text claims that true demonic power requires physical acts of hollowing, and the author asserts that this is specifically achieved through homosexual acts.
To be precise, male homosexual acts.
Right.
The text claims that in this paradigm, a male practitioner becomes physically possessed and used by another in a manner that the author defines as unnatural to his status and spiritual purpose.
Yes.
The author is claiming that this specific physical act is the literal mechanism required to become a demonic vessel.
And they attempt to buttress this claim historically.
How so?
Well, they point to the history of occult practices, citing the prevalence of ritualistic homosexuality in ancient pagan fertility cults, all the way up to the modern teachings of early 20th century occultists like Aleister Crowley.
Crap.
Crowley, for instance, famously incorporated sex magic into his rituals. The text argues that these acts were not just about breaking societal taboos.
Like just being edgy or whatever.
Exactly. They weren't just being provocative. They were mechanical, ritual requirements for the magic to work, even if the practitioner himself was not romantically or exclusively homosexual.
The text views it purely as a mechanical transaction.
Yes.
But hold on, let me get this straight, because the author introduces a massive loophole here.
They do.
The text draws a stark dichotomy between men and women, creating a rule of lasting effects.
That's right.
And it claims that lesbianism does not have the same permanent spiritual consequences on women that male homosexuality has on men.
Yeah.
What is the theological justification for that loophole? Like, why would a supposedly universal magic system have different rules based strictly on gender?
The logic the author uses here is deeply rooted in an ancient, rigid form of gender essentialism. The text claims that women are, by their fundamental nature, more spiritually observant and receptive. Because a woman's physical biology is designed to be a vessel for life, the text argues she is inherently more structurally aligned with being a vessel.
The author points to archetypes like the witch or the succubus as the inversion and perversion of a woman's natural life-giving calling.
Exactly. But regarding the rule of lasting effects, the text argues that while lesbian acts are still spiritually corrosive within this framework, women are more capable of repenting and reforming from that lifestyle without their core nature being permanently broken.
So they can bounce back, spiritually speaking.
That's the author's claim, that a woman's fundamental receptive nature is not deformed by these acts, allowing her to allegedly re-enter healthy heterosexual relationships and attain sanctity.
But for men, the author claims the exact opposite.
The exact opposite.
The text states that a male homosexual has unalterably changed his nature. Even if he repents, even if he attains salvation, the author claims he is fundamentally altered in his physical and spiritual makeup.
Which often compels him to live in permanent celibacy, according to the text.
Wow.
And the text goes even deeper into this perceived alteration. It argues that a male practitioner of magic is attempting to both emulate female nature and simultaneously defile it.
Emulate and defile.
Yeah. The author makes the very specific, controversial claim that male homosexuals are not their own predefined type of human nature.
Okay.
Instead, the text argues they emulate female qualities, and specifically, female dysfunctions.
Yeah, I remember this part. The author even includes a footnote to try and clarify this writing. This is not to say women are, by their nature, dysfunctional, only that the particular dysfunctions that women can be inclined towards are found in male homosexuals.
Right.
I mean, the author is building an incredibly intricate, almost obsessive system of gender essentialism to justify this worldview.
The conclusion the author draws from this architecture is sweeping. The text claims that male homosexuals, even those who have absolutely nothing to do with magic, the occult, or Crowley, are purely by their physical condition and choices predisposed to being influenced by demons.
Because they've engaged in the physical act of hollowing, even without the magical intent.
Yes.
The author is claiming the physical ritual works, regardless of whether you believe in the magic or not. That's intense.
And the author scales this argument up from the individual to the macro-societal level.
Right, so it's not just a personal problem.
No, this isn't just about personal spiritual danger for the author. It's about the survival of civilization.
Because the text argues this is why homosexuality was strictly taboo in Christian societies.
Exactly.
They even point to ancient Greece, claiming that while it wasn't strictly prohibited there, it was still recognized as dangerous to the social fabric.
Yeah.
So the author's core thesis becomes this: permitting, tolerating, and celebrating homosexuality presents a physiological and psychological danger that leads to the spiritual degradation of the entire society.
And to support this narrative of societal manipulation, the author pulls in a piece of modern sociology, which is wild.
It is wild.
They heavily cite a 2012 paper by an evolutionary psychologist named Satoshi
Kanazawa.
titled Intelligence and Homosexuality.
Wait, so if Kanazawa's paper correlates higher IQ with homosexuality, the author isn't disputing the science, they are actually weaponizing it.
Yes, exactly.
How does the author twist a modern sociological study about IQ into a narrative about demonic manipulation?
They completely flip the standard evolutionary psychology narrative.
Yeah.
Kanazawa's findings suggested that, on average, homosexual men have higher childhood IQ scores than non-homosexuals.
Okay.
Now, a sociologist might explore evolutionary reasons for this, but the author of this text looks at that data and constructs a narrative of deliberate spiritual engineering.
Oh, wow.
The text argues that since high IQ correlates positively with success, wealth, and upward mobility, gay men are statistically in a better position to create elite spheres of influence in media, academia, and government.
Are they claiming high IQ is literally a demonic bribe?
Essentially, yes. The author views these high IQs and the subsequent wealth as what they call earthly benefits.
Earthly benefits.
In this framework, these are essentially transactional blessings from dark forces. These benefits enable these individuals to attain power, influence the culture, and drive society at large toward the very spiritual degradation the occult forces desire.
Okay, so the elite spheres of influence become vectors for the demonic hollowing of the broader culture.
That's the argument.
The author is using Kanazawa's demographic data to claim that the upper echelons of society are statistically more likely to be spiritually compromised, and therefore they design a culture that celebrates hollowing.
But the text also points out that these earthly benefits are a trap for the individuals themselves.
The malware eventually gets you.
Right. Looking back at occultists like Crowley, The author is very clear on the ultimate fate of those who walk this path.
Right, because Crowley ended up dying penniless, addicted to heroin, in a boarding house.
The text claims this is the inevitable life cycle of the transaction. Occultists may be able to sate their earthly desires for a time, utilizing these elite spheres of influence, but the malware eventually destroys the host.
It bricks the hard drive.
It breaks a hard drive. The text claims their physical and mental condition inevitably declines, leading to an ignominious death and eternal damnation.
Wow. So we have painted a very bleak, intense picture of what the author believes is happening in the world.
Very bleak.
We've got demonic deception masquerading as empowerment, physical hollowing rituals, and societal manipulation by elite spheres wielding high IQs as dark gifts. It's a lot.
It's a heavy text.
Having established this incredibly dark view of spiritual decay, how does the text define the ultimate goal for believers? Like, what is the counteroffensive to all of this?
The counteroffensive is the titular Society of Saints.
Ah, there it is.
The text mandates that Christians cannot just intellectualize their faith to fight this.
You can't just read about it.
Right. It's not enough to simply sit in a room, hold the correct beliefs in your head, and hope for the best. Remember, the physical must mirror the spiritual.
Oh, yeah.
You have to live spiritually in the exact same manner you live physically. There is zero room for compartmentalization.
So you can't have your Sunday morning church life and then your cutthroat Monday morning corporate life where you impose your will on your employees.
Exactly. Because magical practices are defined as the active undermining of God's will on earth, Christians are supposed to be the immune response.
The immune response.
They must actively embody the will of God on earth. And this brings us back to the mechanics of sanctification, how a normal human being actually transforms into a saint.
And the text gets deeply specific about the theology here, right?
Very specific.
Specifically pulling from Eastern Orthodox Christian traditions rather than Western Catholic or Protestant views.
Yeah, the text introduces a core Orthodox concept regarding the nature of God, often associated with the theology of Gregory Palamas.
Palamas, okay.
It states that God's operations in the world are the energies of God himself.
The concept of God's energies is pretty dense. How does the author explain that without getting bogged down in ancient Greek philosophical jargon?
A helpful way to conceptualize what the text is arguing is to think of God like the sun in our solar system.
The sun, okay.
Sun has an essence, the burning nuclear core millions of miles away. You cannot touch the essence of the sun.
No, you'd burn up.
It is completely inaccessible and unknowable to us. If you tried to touch it, you would be destroyed. However, the sun also emits energies, sunlight and heat.
And those energies travel through space, physically touch the earth, warm our skin, and make plants grow.
Exactly. The sunlight is not a separate creation. It is the sun interacting with us.
Oh, that makes sense.
The Orthodox theology in the text argues that God's essence is untouchable, but his energies, his grace, his actions are his actual literal presence interacting with the world.
Okay.
Therefore, when a person is enacting God's will, when they are pursuing holiness, they aren't just following remote control commands from a distant deity.
Right.
They are literally, physically, and spiritually bathing in and uniting with his energies.
They're absorbing the sunlight.
Yes.
So a saint in this text is defined as someone who aligns their will so perfectly with God's that they become saturated with this energy.
Saturated.
They're animated by what the text calls a totalizing love and devotion to Christ.
This love becomes so strong, so consuming, that Christ is actually able to operate through this saint.
And crucially, the text says Christ enacts his will, but also the saint's will, because at that point of totalizing love, the two wills are identical.
Exactly.
There is no conflict. What the saint wants is exactly what God wants.
The human will hasn't been erased. It has been perfected, heated by the sunlight until it glows with the same fire. Now, the text admits that growing in total, perfect likeness with Christ is impossible in this life.
Yeah.
Because Christ is infinite. But this process of salvation and sanctification is a trajectory that begins here on earth through asceticism and continues eternally.
Which raises the ultimate practical question for me.
What's that?
If the goal is this perfect alignment, this totalizing love that transforms human beings into conduits of divine energy, can a society of saints actually exist in our world?
Yeah.
Like, could you build a whole country or a political system or a government out of this concept?
The author is surprisingly pragmatic on this point.
Are they?
Yeah. The text concludes that a true divine state, A macro-level government whose sole successful purpose is the creation of saints and the perfect sanctification of society is impossible on Earth.
I mean, because if a whole society achieved that, it wouldn't be Earth anymore. That would literally just be heaven.
Exactly the author's point. You cannot mandate totalizing love through legislation. However, the author argues that while a global or national society of saints is impossible, believers are entirely capable of creating microcosms of this heavenly society within the current fallen order of the world.
Microcosms. And what do those microcosms look like? Where do you find them?
Monasteries.
Monasteries.
The text states that this is the precise sociological function of a monastery.
Okay.
They are meant to be small, intentional communities where the physical and spiritual lives are completely integrated without compromise.
So it's an environment controlled for this specific purpose.
It is where asceticism is practiced collectively, where passions are routinely subordinated, and where the collective will of the community is pointed entirely toward absorbing those divine energies.
They're designed to be outposts of heaven in a spiritually hostile territory.
Yes,
And the text leaves us with a very stark societal warning to contrast with the quiet existence of those monasteries.
it does. The author warns that while it's incredibly difficult to build a microcosm of heaven, it is very easy and temporally beneficial, bringing wealth, high IQs, and power to create the inverse of those societies.
The inverse.
The text concludes with the dark assertion that the elite forces leading our societal decline have successfully worked to engineer a nation and a culture that is perpetually under demonic influence.
So if you're not actively building a monastery, metaphorically or literally, the author believes you are likely being swept up by a culture that has been meticulously engineered by occult principles.
That's the takeaway.
The current of the river is demonic, and unless you are actively swimming against it with asceticism, you are being pulled out to sea. That is a heavy, unyielding worldview.
It is absolute and it's binary. You are either actively hollowing yourself out to become a vessel for the demonic, whether you realize you are doing it or not,
Right.
or you are actively subordinating your passions to be filled by the divine energies. There is no neutral ground, no demilitarized zone in this author's architecture.
Wow. So just to recap the intense journey we've been on today.
Now let's recap.
We started by looking at the text's very specific definitions of magic and miracles. Magic is the attempt to enforce your individual will against the laws of nature, which inevitably requires downloading demonic malware.
Right.
Miracles are the result of aligning your will with the creator of nature operating above those laws.
And then we explored the controversial claims regarding the body, how Christian asceticism physically trains the will by subordinating passions, while magic elevates them, demanding a physical vessel.
We navigated the author's highly charged views on sexuality, gender essentialism, and their claims about the rule of lasting effects. We looked at how the author weaponized modern sociology, using Kanazawa's IQ data to claim elite spheres are manipulating society for dark purposes.
And finally, we looked at the ultimate endgame, the slow decay of modern society driven by these forces, contrasted against the microcosms of heaven found in monasteries, where human will is perfected through divine energy.
It is a comprehensive, rigid, and deeply provocative mapping of reality. The author leaves no stone unturned in trying to explain everything.
No, they don't.
And I think there is a final thought we can pull from this text to mull over, one that connects this dense, ancient-sounding theology directly to the modern, secular world we all live in today.
Consider the author's core premise regarding the mechanics of the unseen world.
Okay.
Achieving demonic power requires a deliberate mental emptying or hollowing out to allow outside forces in,
Right.
while simultaneously elevating the imposition of the individual will as the highest possible good. Sanctification, on the other hand, requires a filling through conscious, loving alignment with a higher divine will, subordinating your own desires.
Right. Emptying the mind and forcing your will versus filling the soul and surrendering your will.
Now look at modern secular culture. Look at the self-help aisle of any bookstore.
Oh, boy.
We live in a world that constantly encourages us to empty our minds to cope with stress through secularized mindfulness, meditation apps, and letting go of active thought.
While simultaneously, our entire corporate and social culture insists that imposing our individual will on the world, manifesting our own reality, and bending the universe to achieve our personal goals is the highest possible form of self-actualization.
It raises a profound question based on this text's logic.
It does.
If we apply this author's framework, is modern society accidentally recreating the exact psychological and spiritual conditions of the occult, even for people who don't believe in magic at all.
Wow.
By combining mental emptying with aggressive will manifestation, are we building the perfect blueprint for a haunted house just by following the self-improvement trends of the 21st century?
Are we hollowing ourselves out and handing over the keys? That is a genuinely unsettling thought to leave on.
It really is.
Whether you view this text as profound, illuminating theology, or a highly controversial piece of sociological fiction, it definitely changes the way you look at the blueprint of reality. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive.